Hey, beautiful people. If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're coming back, welcome back. And thank you very much for the patronage. I really appreciate it. Today we're going back to Dan Biddle, who is the president of Genesis Apologetics. You would think that if these creationists really were trying to debunk evolution instead of scamming people, that they would actually learn something about evolution instead of strawmanning it, but they don't. At any rate, let's see if he can be a little bit smarter this time, and I can spend more time going through some of this stuff instead of spending my time correcting his dumb ass on things that he should know if he wants to be teaching this shit. So ball's in your court, Dan. What kind of stupid you got for me today? And might I suggest you sit down because I really don't want to see you hurting yourself. I mean, yeah, we are on opposite sides of the playing field, but you're still a human and you deserve compassion. And while you're thinking about it, if you're new, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button? And if you've already subscribed to me, make sure you're still subscribed because for some reason, YouTube loves to unsubscribe people. Also, if you're new here, I'd like to thank you very much for giving me a chance. And for my fans and subscribers, thank you so much for coming back. You are the lifeblood of this channel. And now, with that, let's get on with the video.
We'll cover over this one quickly. Another evidence, I think, for creation is blood coagulation.
Blood coagulation? Dude, if you're gonna argue for something being evidence of creation, don't you think you ought to at least be able to pronounce it? You don't even have the excuse that coagulation is Latin.
A friend of mine is the #2 guy in charge of a huge health system here in California. He's a creationist, and I said, give me your best shot. What's the best evidence as a medical professional? What's your leading evidence for creation? And he almost interrupted me and says, well, it's obvious, blood coagulation.
Okay, Danny boy, I'm gonna level with you. You see, I think you made up this quote unquote friend, or your friend has a low level job like a janitor in this quote unquote lab in California. And I'll tell you why, just for you. First, you didn't give us the name of this lab, maybe so we couldn't fact check you. Second, you didn't give us the name of this friend. Was that an oversight or was that on purpose? And number three, you didn't give us the title of his job. Again, was that on purpose or what? You see, I happen to know most of your little tricks because I've been on the receiving end of most of your little tricks. And I know that your sheeple aren't going to bother to ask you where this lab is, who your friend is, and what his title is because they've been conditioned just to believe you. And they've also been conditioned to take you at your word that you have set a friend in an unnamed lab, in an unnamed position. And for some reason, that's impressive to them, even though you don't even bother to give them the very basics of this shit. By the way, Danny boy, great friend that you have there. You know, one that can't even be bothered to keep you from making a complete ass of yourself by saying coagulation instead of coagulation. But you do spell it right. At least you got that right.
And I said, well, what do you mean? He says, well, Dan, don't you know that when you get a cut, things happen at the biomolecular level, at the chemistry level, where 5 different independent steps start happening, and if you can't evolve the 5 steps.
Wow, Dan. Do you already have brain damage or something? Because that is one of the dumbest arguments I have ever heard, even from a young earther. Come on. I mean, this argument is so dumb. I actually had to go back and listen to it again because I could not comprehend that a grown man would be that dumb. Seriously. In fact, this argument is so dumb, I actually had to figure out which way I was going to tackle this. And instead of doing a bunch of research on coagulation, I'm gonna go another route and make fun of you. And yeah, I know the basics of coagulation, so don't even go there. Dan, have you ever heard of hemophiliacs and people with other blood clotting disorders? The very presence of these people on Earth is a refutation of this dumb argument. Also, you act as though hemophilia is one disease, which it's not. It has levels of severity, and you can survive with hemophilia, you dunce. Obviously, I'm talking about before the miracles of modern medicine. You could survive with hemophilia, depending upon which type you had. And with modern medicine, survival rates are very high. Plus, you also act as though coagulation is the best thing that ever happened. You have heard of heart attacks, right? Oh, and, blood clots that go to the lungs. These things do happen, and they happen a lot more than the genetic hemophilia. So, yeah.
Every creature that doesn't have these 5 steps in the order that we see them would have just bled out and died. You have to have the 5 steps complete. It's a system. They have to all be there present at the same time. You can't reverse the orders. They all have to be there at the same time. So that's real good evidence. Everything that would have evolved would have just bled out before this design was put in place.
Hemostasis is a normal physiological response to limit blood loss after vascular injury. Blood clots are made up of activated platelets, red blood cells, and fibrin, which hold the clot together. The process is mediated by around 30 proteins, which are known as clotting factors. Platelet activation and aggregation begins when vascular injury exposes collagen and von Willebrand factor from within the vessel wall to the blood. Platelets adhere to these proteins and become partially activated, changing shape and releasing signaling molecules which recruit more platelets to the site. At the same time, a protein called tissue factor triggers initiation of the coagulation cascade, the process that leads to full activation of platelets and the generation of fibrin and clot formation. Vascular injury causes tissue factor on the outside of cells in the vessel wall to come into contact with factor 7A and factor 10A in the blood, leading to the production of a small amount of thrombin.
However, is not this simple. Instead of this basic mechanism, the vertebrate clotting system uses a cascade that can be compared to an elaborate Rube Goldberg machine, being an absurdly complex mechanism for completing a simple task. A major tenet of evolution and biology in general is that unnecessary drains on energy are selected against. Before even approaching a step-by-step process explaining how this cascade could appear, there must be some kind of benefit to the organism. This benefit stems from the concentrations of the factors in blood. Each factor is a catalyst, facilitating the activation of the next enzyme in the chain. In their normal state, they are inactive until they are catalyzed into their active state. Until that point, they freely circulate uneventfully throughout the bloodstream. Fibrinogen would be the next addition to the mix, although it is not the only enzyme capable of creating a lattice structure. Lobsters, for instance, use an enzyme called transglutaminase, which is so similar in form and function to fibrinogen that it is actually referred to as lobster fibrinogen. This chemical is already present in nearly every living cell as vitellogenin, which allows for the growth of a yolk in eggs. When a lobster is injured, its own ruptured cells release their vitellogenin, beginning the initial seal, which then allows more transglutaminase in the lobster's blood to form an even larger clot. Doolittle and Dafei Feng had already explored the clotting cascade in genetic and enzymatic detail and presented their results in the 1987 Cold Spring Harbor Symposium on Quantitative Biology. Virtually every enzyme in the cascade is a very specific class known as serine proteases, which serves the function of cleaving other enzymes and even themselves. The fact that each of these factors were serine proteases led Doolittle and Feng to examine the genes responsible for each of these factors to see if there was a genetic relationship between them, like transglutaminase and vitellogenin. They discovered that each of the factor proteases in the cascade were indeed modified copies of the prothrombin gene, showing only minor genetic variation.
Just in case you didn't get that, Danny, the study that showed the genetic relationship between these came out in 1987. You have no excuse not to know this, unless, of course, you are a deceptive ideologue who doesn't want to know this, or maybe you do know this and you just want your audience to be dumb sheeple or ignorant sheeple, not dumb but ignorant, and you somehow don't want them to understand this. Yeah, that's it.
In 1990, Russell Doolittle and Marcia Riley published the results of an enzymatic and genetic analysis of vitellogenin in crustaceans. They discovered that the transglutaminase gene was a duplicate copy of the vitellogenin gene that had experienced subsequent mutations. This duplication allowed the original gene to continue specializing in developing yolks, while the new one was free to specialize in developing a clotting enzyme.
This thrombin fully activates platelets and triggers a cascade of clotting factors that activate each other, culminating in factor 10A-mediated generation of a larger burst of thrombin production on the platelet surface. One molecule of factor 10A leads to the formation of 1,000 molecules of thrombin. Thrombin converts the soluble protein fibrinogen into insoluble fibrin strands at the site of vessel injury, while at the same time activating factor 13 protein to cross-link the fibers. The fibrin mesh stabilizes the clot and traps more platelets and red blood cells, facilitating its growth. In normal physiological conditions, the process of clot breakdown or fibrinolysis begins as the structural integrity of the vessel wall is restored. Endothelial cells begin to secrete a protein called tissue plasminogen activator, which activates the protease plasmin to degrade fibrin, dismantling the structure of the clot and restoring the integrity of the vessel.
After Russell Doolittle and Young Zhang conducted an analysis of pufferfish and sea squirts, they discovered that thrombin itself is a variant of an enzyme sea squirts also possess, originating from the same constituent genetic domains as the vertebrate factors. This enzyme does not serve the purpose of clotting in the sea squirt, but as had been demonstrated in a laboratory experiment conducted by a team led by Fumio Shishikura in 1997, it does catalyze mammalian fibrinogen into fibrin. This confirmed that all of the factors in the clotting cascade have their origins in already available enzymes.
Okay, evidence number 5 we put as the overwhelmingly weak evidence for human evolution.
Now, wait a goddamn minute. Your next proof for creation is not proof for creation, but the quote-unquote overwhelming evidence for evolution being a fraud. I guess you're going to get to this overwhelming evidence of evolution being a fraud later, so I'll leave that alone for now. But you do know what proof is, right? That is not proof of creation. Also, you do know that even if you succeeded in showing evolution to be false, which, good luck with that, it wouldn't prove creation. I think you need to go back to kindergarten and learn what words mean, because you are having a hell of a time using your words.
So let's just go through this. The number one thing to look at when it comes to human evolution is the changing stories. So here's a human evolution tree from about 100 years ago. That's the idea they would have pitched to my grandpa or great-grandpa. They've got different creatures on this tree that go on here. 1927, they changed it up again. 1931, they've added some and removed some.
So let me get this straight. You're surprised that the quote-unquote story of human evolution changes with new evidence. That is not surprising to scientists, okay? The narrative of the science changes to fit the evidence. The evidence does not change to fit the narrative of science. But you know what doesn't change? Religion. Because religion is arrogant enough to assume that it has all the answers, that it never has to change. And that is what young earthers do. Now, not all Christians are this way. There are Christians that accept the science and work the science into their worldview, but that is not young earthers. And honestly, you people are going to have to try harder than you are.
But you know, in the first three ones here, they have Piltdown Man and Java Man, which were either frauds or have been proven to be apes, but they carried the lie for 50 years. Carried all through.
When will you people quit bringing up Piltdown Man, a hoax that's over a century old and was proven to be a hoax before my dad was born? Honestly, come up with something new for once. In 1912, Charles Dawson, an amateur archaeologist, found what he considered to be a missing link in the village of Piltdown near Sussex, England, and he gave it to a geologist. Dawson and the geologist named Woodward Smith found more remains that they thought belonged to the same individual. And they placed these at about 500,000 years old. Now, keep in mind that in 1912, there was no such thing as radiometric dating, not even in sight yet. So I have no fucking clue where they got the 500,000 years from. In 1949, using fluorine testing, Dr. Kenneth Oakley discovered that the Piltdown findings actually dated to around 50,000 years old, and a biological anthropologist and anatomist found that these finds are actually of two different species, a human and most probably an orangutan. And they also found that the finds had been artificially stained to match the gravel of the area. So yes, Piltdown Man was a fraud. The real scientists found this out, and the fraudulent scientists were kicked out of the scientist club because that's what happens to frauds. And this took place around 1949 because that's when radiometric dating was invented. And you should know this, and you probably do know this, and you are just lying again. So, Java Man is a specimen of Homo erectus that was found on the island of Java. I'm not sure where they get the idea that it was either a hoax or just an ape. I get the feeling they think that Homo erectus are apes, which, by the way, is absolutely, positively true. Creationists, you need to stop using this argument because nobody's arguing that we are not apes. We are still apes, whether you like it or not. Look, I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and I'll probably keep saying it because you people seem not to get the point. The truth is the truth, and it doesn't matter whether you like it or not. It doesn't matter whether you accept it. It's the truth. Okay, I found out where they get this thing about Doberman being a hoax. Originally, it was thought to be a hoax, but later on, they discovered that it was indeed a hominin species, particularly that of Homo erectus. I have no idea why creationists read something that says such and such is thought to be a hoax, and then they're like, aha, it's a hoax. And they don't read any further because if they had bothered, they'd find it wasn't. Well, friends, I wanted to give you your weekly dose of stupid, but like all things, you can overdose on the stupid. So I'm going to call it quits for now. Thank you for watching. I put a lot of clips in here because there were some things I wasn't quite sure about. So other people who know a lot more than I do about these topics would be the ideal ones to explain these topics, which is why I put in clips of them explaining. Plus, I mean, come on, they do it a lot better than I could. So, anyway, thanks for watching. If you like what I do, please subscribe to this channel if you have not already. Please like the video. It pumps up the algorithm. Leave a comment down below. That also helps the algorithm. And please share this video, especially with any young Earth friends. If you are financially able, please join this channel. You can join for as little as 99 cents a month. You get custom emojis and you also get these debunks early. So only if you're financially stable. And I will see you guys later. Bye.